So I'm here with Star Parker, and Star is someone that I've gotten to meet in the last 3 years, and I don't say this to you, but you really have impacted how I think, and you've challenged me to read more and think more, and I'm encouraged that we're finally getting to partner with you deeply. It's been a long runway, but we're excited as the River Foundation to come alongside Star and blow wind in the sails, because God has got a great direction that he's bringing you in this ministry here. So the hardest question I think I'm going to ask in a 15-minute podcast is try and spend 5 to 8 minutes to paint the picture of the flight plan that you've been on that brings you to this place at this point in time, kind of an Esther moment. You have a lot to share, but how can you say to us, so we can get to know you, where you've been and how God has brought you where you are today to unleash you for the kingdom?
Oh, is that what he's done? I'm very excited about what God has done, if that's what he has done, to unleash me for the kingdom. I've not heard it like that. I so appreciate you, and I appreciate the River Foundation because what I do is run a policy institute here in Washington, D.C. It is a nonprofit organization where we promote market-based ideas to solve poverty. We fight poverty to restore dignity in the life of those in despair through a message of faith, freedom, and personal responsibility. And how I got here is because I was one trapped in a deception of government would take care of me. I had believed all the lies of the left, that my problems were someone else's fault, that America was so racist I didn't need to mainstream, that I was poor because there were wealthy people, and I grew real despise for that. And so I started living really recklessly, criminal activity, drug activity, sexual activity, in and out of abortion clinic after clinic, then finally landed on welfare in a little dark hole. And when God found me there, I was just so grateful that I committed my whole life and everything about my life to him. So in doing that, he started stirring in me that I left a lot of people behind. I mean, there were at that point 5 million women and 9 million children living like I was living at the hand of Uncle Sam. And so I wanted to make significant changes. And I was asked to consult on federal welfare reform when the GOP showed up in town to make those changes in the 90s. I was one of their consultants. And as we changed the reality for those 5 million people and 9 million children, I knew we had discussed with the country what we shouldn't be doing. At that point, we had been spending about $400 billion a year on anti-poverty programs. We were probably spending about 15 trillion at that point on anti-poverty programs.
So billion with a B and trillion with a T.
Yes, and nothing was working. Now, we hadn't even changed the poverty rate. We still haven't changed the poverty rate. But what we did change was the attitude of those that are at that first level. And it was not where God would want them. I mean, the fate is not your destiny in our country. And so all that I had discovered in his truths, I wanted to share with others, but I need barriers removed. So I started the work of CURE to say what we should be doing. What people want to be charitable. You know, it's one of the things I appreciate about the River Foundation. And they want to help people help themselves, and they want to do their part to give back, but you can't have it both ways. In fact, what got me off of welfare is now I'm in church life, I'm growing in church life, and one day the pastor looks out at 4,000 people and said, why are you living on welfare? The government is not your source, God is. And you have a choice. It's God or government. And so what our job here in Washington, D.C. is to remove the government from places he should not be and allow community and church to get back into the lives of the poor so that we can help them help themselves. So that's CURE in a nutshell. We do it through 3 programs. We have a policy program, of course, where we can change the law so that people can change their lives. I don't think many understand how many restrictions are on the poor so that they can't change their reality. So we have to change those laws so that we can let them live free. We also have a media program so that we can get the message out. We basically in the media, we're looking at race, culture, and poverty issues from a Judeo-Christian perspective. And so you'll see us all over the place there, and including our own studios. Like, thank you for coming into our studio. Thank you for helping us get our studio through the River Foundation so that we can get those messaging out to the people that are in our most distressed zip codes. And then the third program we have is a clergy program to where we're looking at that polling data that a third of Black America said that they're evangelical and conservative. Their pastors were running numbers from 4 to 7 1,000 in this country, and no one knows who they are or where they are. So what we've done is we said, let's go find these folks so that we can give them a little bit more information so that they're not voting against their interest on Tuesday. The Christian community for too long has been disconnected from where we make our laws, and now the public square is in total chaos. So we organize those pastors. We have a full program for them, including they come to Washington, D.C. once a year and enjoy a 3-day policy summit with us. On our list currently, we have about 800 of them. Half of them are very, very engaged, but we're on the way to get a couple of thousand of them to represent a couple of million African Americans who are not getting the true side of the story when it comes to news. So that's it in a nutshell.
I just love how you're influencing so many specific areas. So you're going right to leadership, serving them, informing them, encouraging, challenging them to be leaders.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, wait. You're not talking about the political people.
No,
now
that's,
you're talking about
that's
the pastors.
the pastor. They're the leaders,
I'm
right?
like, I'm not encouraging any
No, they have
politicians,
the pastors have the mantle of authority.
And in fact, that's why we do it that way. Is because if they don't know, then how are their congregations going to know? And how would they know? They know the scripture. And that's one of the reasons that it's a unique program, because we know they already know the truth in the Lord. What they don't have is the other side of that coin, to know how public policy and how their biblical worldview converge in law. And once they get it, they get it.
That's the application piece.
Yes.
Take the truth, apply it,
right,
in practice
right,
into the law. And
that's
so,
it.
I mean, honestly,
right.
as a informed and educated person, I never understood public policy.
Yeah.
I really didn't.
Well, most Christians don't, because what we have been trained to do is live individual. We didn't expect to wake up one day and our country is inconsistent with our founding principles of Christianity, capitalism, and a constitution. We didn't expect that. Most Christians got up and went to Sunday school on Sunday. They went to work on Monday. They told their kids they're going to school and they behaved themselves. And then by Thursday, they wonder what happened. And then we wake up one day and we really want to know what happened. Well, what happened was what has happened throughout Christian history. There's an enemy that was sowing all kind of negative stuff. And now the wheat and the tares have grown up together and we have a whole lot of purging to do. Some Christians are just waking up to the fact that abortion has wiped out a whole, oh my goodness, when you think about those abortion numbers, 6-8 million. Some Christians are just waking up to the fact that homosexual marriage is really the law of the land, and so now I can't express my Christianity in a public square. And how we got here is through law. Public policy changes the reality in your behaviors and your opinion. So that's what the other side of God's, that doesn't want God's kingdom has been promoting. And so now we have to rebuild our founding principles. So I don't blame the people per se. I do it once they know the truth and then they don't do it. But one of the challenges we have, especially in our most distressed, hard-hit zip codes, and those leaders you're talking about, is they didn't know. Right. Where were they going to get that answer? We have one of those eunuch Philip moments where he's reading it, but he doesn't know. He's like, well, how am I supposed to understand it? And then Philip had to explain it to him.
And so this is the third piece, is informing folks.
Yes.
Telling the truth.
That's right.
And not being ashamed of the truth.
No, being ashamed of
and what I love, Star, is that you really struggled with what's the delivery of the truth to folks. That's because right. You shared with me, just as a cultural divide in America, you may see a conservative news station, and African American pastors may see you on there, and the thought is, well, Star's sold out to to the Anglo business guy.
Right. Now, there are those that do that. The third of Black America, what we would consider center left, and those leaders, and those are the ones that get a whole lot of media attention. But you will not, and no one really understands and appreciates the depth of how many don't do that. They sit there and they say, oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that before. And it's one of the reasons that we are adding a TV show ourselves, because what we found is that most of the African-American leadership that's on the center right, it's not that they reject the message or think that we've sold to white. They just don't get that news station. They're not going to sit and watch a Fox. They're not going to sit and watch a traditional. Where they get their news is through a lot of the traditional Christian networks, which don't approach news necessarily, or they just do what most Americans do. They turn on their local news, ABC, NBC, CBS, and then they're getting all of that stuff in between, just trying to find out what are the weather patterns going to be and what's traffic look like. Right. So what we have to do now is interject ourselves and our information into their world. So we do that with pastors on a variety of levels. We have blackcommunitynews.com, which is a daily blog to get the information about, I guess people could call it policy, political, but it's basically from a Christian perspective.
And as an Anglo, as a white man, it's a great place for me to get resources.
And you go to blackcommunitynews.com.
How about it?
Oh, how are we going to know that it's Black community? This town wants Black numbers. No, but anyway, so we have that. We have urbancure.org, of course. Then weekly, I write a syndicated column for creators, so we make sure that people get that. Monthly, our pastors have a book club that they're a part of. Quarterly, they get a newsletter so that they see that I'm not alone. What? I'm not alone. And then annually, they come to Washington, D.C. And so then through media, we reach into all of the markets. This is not just specifically focused for those that are in our hard-hit community. And then here in Washington, D.C., we use that leverage to force these politicians to do the things that we want them to do when it comes to anti-poverty initiatives.
And you say in Washington, D.C., you mean in Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah, we're
right by the press club.
Oh, Derek says it best. He says, 2 blocks from the White House, across the street from the press club, and a stone's throw from the Congress.
And it's exactly true. It is.
Yeah, it is.
You're the epicenter of influence here.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
It is fun.
So talk a minute. Just, I got to meet you maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but you had a little trajectory in with Jess. I always like to ask the question with our ministry partners, how'd you hear about us? How'd you get connected with the River Foundation? And how did we move the relationship along to be now having the privilege to partner with you?
Well, it's very exciting because you guys have been on the forefront in your state, which I didn't know, but I met your now Lieutenant Governor, Janine Hampton. I didn't know her at the time. Unbelievable. Matt Bevin, you're now governor. I knew him before that. Unbelievable. Angela Minter, Sisters for Life, is my sister for life. And so the next thing you know, when like minds are doing similar work, you over time meet each other. So Angela introduced me to Jess. We hit it off because your heart is the same as our heart. You've been doing in your sphere what we should do as Christians, helping others when God has blessed us. And so we hit it off immediately. I mean, from his wife's books to their business in their own community. And so it was just a wonderful opportunity for me personally. But then when I found out that they were tithing through their business, that even more excited me, because I've always believed that if the body of Christ would just do what the Lord asked, just tithe and offer, then we wouldn't need a welfare state. I mentioned we were at $400 billion when we did this 20 years ago. Now we're at $900 billion. These anti-poverty programs cost our country $900 billion a year. It's a quarter of our budget. And if we could point to anywhere it was working, then we might say, okay, but there's nothing working for the poor. Not one place, not in their housing policy, not in their food policy, not in their health and human services policy. Obviously, we've been doing something wrong. And I think what we've been doing wrong is charity belongs to the church. Render to Caesar what's his and God what's his. Caring for people belongs to God. So we want the government out of that. And I think that between Jess' heart and my heart, we just kind of connected. Then I meet you and it's like, oh, brother, how many of these, maybe I should move to Kentucky because if everybody out there is like you. No, okay. I'm not coming to Kentucky.
So listen on the podcast. This is a fist bump to Star here. Man,
podcast. Okay.
As I teach the class, Give, Save, and Spend at Asbury, I talk about the church is usurping its blessing over to the government, and we should get blessed because it's better to give than receive.
Right.
Which is so fun. And I'm teaching social entrepreneurship in the fall.
Okay.
There, and so I'll be leaning into your material on that.
Well, that's healthy. I think that's wonderful.
So last question here. What would you say to the folks in our bank, in our sphere that are contributing to you by working and profits go towards this great ministry? How would you encourage them to jump aboard and be involved and be informed?
Well, I would hope that they would be involved in CURE. The way that we build CURE is one supporter at a time. This is a work of the people. We have donors that give us $1. We have donors that give us $100,000. And I really just appreciate that. But also I would ask them to be involved locally. We cannot say that the role of government is to help my next door neighbor. No, we have to be involved in people's lives. When you see people in need in your own little corner, then we should be there to find out what has broken down in their life. Do they need just a prayer? Do they need a little book? One of the things that we do here at CURE, we keep books and supplies so that if someone says they have a challenge in their life, we have a book for them so that they can try to figure out how to recover themselves. So, it's twofold. It's one, let's change the laws here for our public square. But it's number two, then that means let's get involved locally and care and get in somebody's life and just let them know that the body of Christ is alive in us.
And so Star Parker with CURE, and CURE stands for?
The Center for Urban Renewal and Education.
Amen. And keep up the great work. Thank you so much for letting us participate with you.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.